Yeah, New York City fucking sucks nowadays. New York City fucking sucks nowadays. New York City has changed a lot. New York City used to be the shit. New York City used to be a very special place to go and visit, and New York City used to be so. It used to be so like fun. Like being in New York City used to be like a grand experience, for lack of better words. It just had a special aura to itself. New York City had like a special aura to itself. And you go, whenever you go to New York City, you'll be excited because of just the hype around New York City. New York City is a very popular city, of course, and it has a quote unquote hype around itself. Because New York City is a city that never sleeps. You know, and people. It's just very popular. New York City can be seen in music. New York City can be seen, in sports. New York City can be seen, on television shows. There have been several television shows that have been taking place in New York City. And New York City was where hip hop was created. So New York City definitely has a cultural influence like no other city, to be honest. In New York City, you have Wall Street. You know, since New York City has Wall Street, New York City can also be seen as one of the economic capitals of the United States. Because Wall Street, is a big staple in finance. New York City has, you know, Broadway, where the best actors all across the country, all across the world, they perform in Broadway. So New York City has a strong cultural influence. That is very diverse. New York City can be seen in like various aspects of our American culture. But New York City is not the same. New York City is not the same anymore. I went to New York City this past summer, in summer of 2022. I was there for about 3 weeks. And I'm not new to the New York City area. When I was younger, for a few years, for about 3.5 years or so, I lived in northern New Jersey, about like 5 miles from the city limits of New York City, up in northern New Jersey, Bergen County to be exact. So I'm used to being in the New York City area and New York City itself. New York City, even back when I was living there, back in the early 2000s, it had a special aura about it. You know, living in northern New Jersey, for a few years when I was a kid, I always used to be excited to go to New York City. It used to feel so nostalgic. Oh my gosh, I'll be so excited. I'm in New York City. It would just feel so special, you know. but it's different now. I went in New York City past summer, and I went to all five boroughs. I was in Manhattan, I was in the Bronx, I was in Queens, I was in Brooklyn. Okay, I went to all the boroughs except for Staten Island. I did not go to Staten Island. I was in Jersey though this past summer too, and like the whole New York City area just changed. It's fucking whack as shit now. Like the whole energy of New York City, especially Manhattan, is like this dead energy, uncomfortable feeling I get when I'm in Manhattan. Manhattan's not of today. Manhattan of today is very uncomfortable. It's not exciting at all. It feels dead. Like the energy in Manhattan is very uncomfortable and dead, and it's not exciting like how it used to be. Manhattan used to have this energy that it almost felt like you're in space because you have to pinch yourself. New York City had just had this fucking aura about itself. You know, this feeling when you're in the city that you almost had to pinch yourself on the arm to make sure this is really a true physical reality experience. You know, New York City used to be that of a special place. You know, and you could just feel that special energy in New York City. You know, and it was very enjoyable. You know, this was back in the early to mid 2000s, back when I was living in northern New Jersey. So I got that feeling that New York City was a special place back when I would visit, from time to time between 2003 and 2006. I've been to the Bronx Zoo before. I've been to Central Park before. And this is from 2003 to 2006. You know, I've been to like a festival in Brooklyn back in 2004. And I used to love going to New York City. I used to be so excited. But now I went to New York City this past summer. The energy in New York City was totally dead. That exciting feeling of being in New York City this past summer, I did not feel it. I did not enjoy being in New York City this past summer. It was a horrible experience. And I thought to myself, like, why does New York City suck now? New York City went from being one of the most glamorized, popular cities and it used to be so enjoyable to go to. Just that feeling that you're in New York City. You had to pinch yourself on the arm to make sure it's a real physical experience in reality. And went from that to a dead city that's uncomfortable energy. And I know one of the reasons, and I thought to myself, like, well, why has it changed like this? You know, and I had conversations with some other people who are from New York City, and they told me New York City, changed a lot since COVID. COVID put a horrible effect on New York City. That's what people told me. Because I'm talking to so many people from New York City, I'm like, damn, New York City has changed. New York City used to be so fun and exciting. And I was like, what happened? And they told me, man, New York City has changed a bit since COVID. Like New York City had New York City had a horrible time with COVID, from what I've told. And back in 2020 when COVID happened and when it first really broke out in the United States, I saw on the news that New York was devastated by COVID. I saw all over the news, CNN, MSNBC, Fox. I saw it online, various articles showing just New York City being devastated by COVID. A lot of people passed away in New York City from COVID, and it was just horrible. And people, in New York City this past summer, they told me, hey, it was horrible with COVID in New York City. In New York City, people with COVID, they were dying left and right. That's how bad it was. And where I'm from, we did not get COVID that bad. My city, my area handled COVID pretty well. And that's a blessing because certain cities around the world, were getting devastated by COVID. COVID killing a whole lot of people. And I'm glad that in my city, in my area in which I live, COVID wasn't too bad. And ever since COVID, people in New York, they told me that it just put a foul energy on the city. They told me it just COVID put a foul energy on the city. And I could just sense that energy on people. COVID changed a lot of people's lives. You have to remember. A lot of people could not work during COVID, so they're not making as much money. It's slowing down the economy. So people can't live their normal lives. A lot of places were closed down during COVID. Certain malls were closed down during COVID, and a lot of restaurants were closed down during COVID. So people cannot enjoy life like how they normally could during COVID. So that in itself just put a spirit on people to be depressed and sad and down and just be in general low energy. So COVID put like a panic on New York City, and people still haven't like fully adapted to this post-COVID world. And people are still desiring that old pre-2020 life of just stress-free everyday life without having to wear a mask, without always having to wash your hands, without always having to put hand sanitizer on. People miss that life before COVID, and now a lot of people are just still, even though 2020 was 3 years ago, we're in 2023 now. People are still in that COVID mental state of depression. And certain cities like New York City, who were devastated with the COVID, people were passing away left and right in New York City. So that COVID situation, changed New York City drastically, put just like a foul energy in the air in New York City. New York City is definitely not the same place, And, aside from COVID, I noticed in New York City, the demographics have changed. In the New York City area in general, and this applies to a lesser extent in northern New Jersey too. The demographics of the New York City area have changed. New York City for a long time has always been like a very diverse city where people from all across the world move to. You can find like every culture in New York City from across the world. You You'll find Black Americans. You'll find Africans, Nigerians, Ghanaians. You'll find Asians, Chinese people, Japanese people, Arab people, Indian people, all in New York City. Europeans, Polish people, Spaniard people, Latin Americans, Dominicans, Haitians, Jamaicans, Caribbean people. You find a whole range of cultures in New York City. And it's been like that for a long time, before I was born. Even going back probably to the 60s, New York City has been very diverse. But New York City, is missing one element nowadays. You still find a couple Black Americans in New York City nowadays, but New York City's Black American population is extremely endangered, damn near non-existent. But you'll still see a couple Black Americans in New York City, in the New York City area. You'll find more Black Americans, in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, than the actual New York City itself nowadays. But and when I say Black Americans, I mean people who are descendant of American slaves in North America. I'm not when I say Black American, I'm not talking about all Black people who were born in America. If you're Nigerian American, I'm not counting you as Black American. If you're Haitian American, I'm not counting you as Black American. If you're Jamaican American, I'm not referring to you as Black American. I mean, as Black American, I mean the descendants of North American slaves here in the United States. You don't find a lot of Black Americans in New York City nowadays. A lot of the Black Americans who are from New York City, they moved away. And this began in the 80s. You started to see a decent amount of Black Americans move from New York City in the 80s. And this continued in the 90s and the early 2000s as well. Black Americans who, a lot of them who were originally from the South, migrated to New York City during the Great Migration, when the slaves, not even slaves, but when because this was after slavery. The Great Migration was after slavery, so I shouldn't have said slaves. But during the Great Migration, a lot of Black Americans who are from North Carolina, South Carolina, the Virginias, they moved northward, to New York City and other northern cities. So we during the Great Migration, we see thousands, millions of Black Americans move from the South to the North. The cities like New York City, to cities like Chicago, to cities like, So New York City used to have a large amount of Black Americans. New York City also had a decent amount of Caribbeans. But now, you're starting to see more Africans, in New York City. But historically, New York City was home to millions of Black Americans. But now, starting in the 80s and 90s, you see a lot of most New York City's Black American population move out. And all the way up to like the early 2000s, the New York City area had all the way up to like the early to mid 2000s, the New York City area had like a decent amount of Black Americans. But they all moved away. A lot of people, a lot of Black Americans who are from the actual city of New York moved to like New Jersey, or a lot of Black Americans in New York City, they move down south. You gotta understand, New York City is expensive, so not a lot of people can afford housing in New York City, especially Black Americans who might not make as much money as some of these other races who are more privileged. So Black Americans, they had to leave New York City. Most likely because of economic reasons and cultural reasons or whatever. You know, Black Americans no longer live in New York City like that. If you go to New York City in today's age, in New York City nowadays, most of the Black population there are Caribbeans and Africans. You go to New York City, out of 100 Black people in New York City, two of them might be Black Americans. Like four of them might be Black Americans out of 100. The rest, most of them will be African or Caribbean. You know, in New York City, you see a lot of Jamaicans, Haitians, Panamanians. You see a lot of Black Caribbean people in New York City. And it's crazy, let me really get to the topic here. The reason why New York City sucks nowadays is because it no longer has Black Americans. Black Americans no longer live in the city of New York in large numbers. Black Americans were the people who made New York City, New York City. Black Americans, were the foundation of the New York City culture. And we all know what the New York City culture is. Hip hop. Hip hop transcended New York City. Back in the early 70s, I believe in 1973 to be exact, hip hop was birthed in Bronx, New York. And from its creation in the Bronx, New York, hip hop spread to the rest of the five boroughs and the whole New York City, all five boroughs of New York City were flourished and cultured with this new hip hop culture. And the people who began the hip hop culture were Black Americans from the South. And I'm not saying like other people besides Black Americans of Southern heritage did not contribute to hip hop. There were Caribbean Blacks who contributed to hip hop, and there were, Hispanics who contributed to hip hop. But the first people who started hip hop and the culture of people who laid the foundation down for hip hop are Black Americans from Southern heritage. Let's keep it real. We know about DJ Kool Herc. DJ Kool Herc, he was one of the founders of hip hop, but he was Jamaican. But who did DJ Kool Herc learn to DJ from? DJ Kool Herc wasn't the first hip hop DJ. He's credited to be the first hip hop DJ, but he wasn't the first DJ who was doing what he was doing. So where did he learn it from? He had to learn it from somebody. And there were other Black American of Southern heritage around New York City who were doing the same shit DJ Kool Herc was doing. And DJ Kool Herc definitely learned some tricks of the trade of DJing from these other Black Americans of Southern heritage who were in New York City. And I forgot his name. See, DJ Kool Herc wasn't a rapper. DJ Kool Herc was not an MC. He was a DJ, right? So the biggest element in hip hop is rapping, MCing, right? The most popular element of hip hop is rap. DJ Kool Herc was not a rapper. He did not rap. He was just a DJ. And when DJ Kool Herc first began his hip hop parties in New York City and the Bronx back in the early 70s, he was just a DJ. He was not a rapper. He started off those parties in the early 70s, in the Bronx with an MC, a rapper. DJ Kool Herc had a rapper on his side. DJ Kool Herc had a rapper on his side, and that rapper was a Black American dude from South Carolina. So the first rapper in hip hop was a Black American guy originally from South Carolina. That was DJ Kurt's right hand man, but I forgot his name. I'm sorry, guys, but yeah, the first rapper in hip hop was a Black American who was originally born in South Carolina. Could have been North Carolina, either North Carolina or South Carolina, I don't remember, but it was one of the Carolina states. So rap can be traced back to the rapper from South Carolina who was cool with DJ Kool Herc and rapped at DJ Kool Herc's first hip hop party back in 1973. So rap and hip hop definitely has Black American roots. Even one of the people who influenced DJ Kool Herc was James Brown. DJ Kool Herc used to mix and DJ with James Brown records. James Brown was Black American, so hip hop is a Black American founded art form in New York City. And hip hop got so popular in New York City, you can go to any quarter in New York City back in the 80s, 90s, even the 70s, where you saw graffiti art everywhere, right? You saw random kids across New York City back in the day breakdancing on the corner. The B-boys, the B-girls, right? You saw all over New York City back in the days. You saw groups of ciphers rapping, MCing, rap battling on the corners. That was just a part of New York City culture, and that culture started from Black Americans of Southern heritage. Black Americans were the ones who made New York City cool. New York City didn't really become a cool city, a hip city that everyone wanted to go to like that until hip hop was popular. Everybody wanted to be from New York when real hip hop was popular. And that was because of Black Americans, right? Everybody wanted to be from New York because New York was seen as cool because they were the ones who started rap and hip hop. So Black Americans put an extreme high level of fame to New York City that no one else has ever put on New York City. Black Americans made it cool to be New York. Black Americans were the people in New York City who popularized certain slangs like word up, like son. Black Americans were the ones who popularized certain New York City trends, like wearing Timberland boots, or trying to dress like LL Cool J. You know, everyone wanted to be like LL Cool J, right? Back in the 80s. And LL Cool J is part Black American. So Black Americans are like, they're the ones who were one of the roots of Black culture, New York City. And now that Black Americans no longer live in New York City is like a totally different place. New York City is like a totally different place without Black Americans. It literally feels different. You know, now that Black Americans are gone from New York City, it's a totally different city. People don't want to go be from New York now. People from all across the country, from all across the world, they wanted to be from New York because New York City was cool because Black Americans made New York City cool in hip hop. But nowadays, New York City ain't no. Most people talk shit about New York City nowadays. New York City ain't the same no more. New York City no longer has the same respect anymore. You know, and that's because like New York City lacks that respect nowadays because, especially in a hip hop Black culture, New York City does not get respect anymore because there are no longer any cool rappers coming from New York City anymore. Like the most talented rappers at one point in time, a lot of them were coming from New York City. Biggie Smalls from New York. Well, I should even use him as an example because he's not Black American. He's Jamaican. I forgot. Jay-Z, he's Black American. He's from Brooklyn, New York City. Mobb Deep, they're Black Americans. They're from New York City. Cameron, he's Black American. He's from New York City. Ja Rule, he's Black American. He's from New York City. Rakim, he's Black American. He's from New York City. And these are all rappers that I'm naming. Nas, he's a rapper. He's Black American. He's from New York City. New York City used to have a plethora of Black American, of Southern heritage rappers who are like megastars. 50 Cent, Black American was a rapper megastar from New York. DMX was a megastar rapper from New York. And people used to look up to rappers like DMX and 50 Cent. They're from New York. And people used to look up to DMX and 50 Cent and wanted to be like 50 Cent and DMX. And DMX and 50 Cent had a strong culture on American. DMX and 50 Cent had a strong influence on American culture. You know, millions of people used to buy their music. Millions of people used to buy G Unit clothing, and you used to see DMX and movies and 50 Cent in movies. And people used to want to be like Black American New York City rappers. But nowadays, in today's present generation, today's present age, there's no fucking New York City rapper who people want to be like. Okay, and there's New York City rappers like in today's age, like ASAP Rocky, ASAP Ferg, and there's a whole bunch of little drill rappers from New York City nowadays. But a lot of them are not Black American rappers. Takashi 6ix9ine, he's a fucking Mexican, Puerto Rican rapper. He's not Black American. New York City doesn't have a lot of Black American rappers nowadays. And it's evident because New York City just has a whole bunch of whack rappers, and most of them are not Black Americans of Southern heritage. Most of the rappers in New York, from New York nowadays are Caribbean. Yeah, most of the rappers from New York City nowadays and this new generation are Caribbean. They're not Black American of Southern heritage. So that shows you like one of the reasons why hip hop has declined. One of the reasons why New York hip hop has declined is because of the absence of Black Americans of Southern heritage in New York City. No Black Americans, not enough Black Americans are still living in New York City, you know, to give way to Black American rappers. New York City is just not the same place it used to be. You know, New York City music sucks now because, it no longer has a Black American influence. New York City culture just sucks now. The feel of New York sucks now because the city's culture no longer has a Black American influence. People don't even respect New York City in the hip hop culture anymore, in the rap culture anymore. In Black culture, a lot of people hear New York City and laugh like, "You from New York?" Ha 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 ha. Even Charleston White, I heard a video from Charleston White going off on New York saying, man, he was clowning New York. Charleston White was clowning New York in one of his recent videos. But a lot of people don't fuck with New York nowadays. It's not a trend. It's not popping to be from New York nowadays because New York in today's age no longer has a Black American influence. New York City used to be the shit. Back when Black Americans, were the main rappers from New York City, like Mobb Deep, like 50 Cent, like DMX. Those are Black American rappers who put New York City on the map and made New York City popular because they just had that swag about them because they were Black American. Black Americans just have a swag, an it factor, a charisma, something special about ourselves that sets us apart from even other blacks. You know, and New York City no longer has that black swag, that black cultural influence. So New York City now is just dry and weak as shit. You can go there and just like I'm not shitting on all my other black people who are dominating New York City in population right now. Like I'm not hating on Caribbeans, I'm not hating on Africans, but Caribbean and Africans do not have a cultural influence, a cultural impact comparable to Black Americans of Southern heritage. And there's no slight to anybody, but it is what it is. Black Americans have the strongest cultural influence, especially out of all Black people in the world. So Black Americans are just a special people. And Black American culture is so unique that once Black Americans leave a certain city, that city changes for the worst drastically. Black Americans left New York City between the 80s and the early 2000s. Now, New York City is just a weak piece of shit. It's not fun to go to New York City without Black Americans. Let me keep it real. Imagine where you live, right? Most of you guys living in America, most of you guys living in big cities like Chicago, Indianapolis, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta. Imagine if Atlanta, imagine if all the Black Americans who currently live in Atlanta moved away from Atlanta and Black Americans no longer lived in Atlanta and a whole bunch of Jamaicans and Haitians replaced Black Americans in Atlanta. So now, hypothetically, in this situation, Atlanta is just a city full of Jamaicans and Haitians with no Black Americans. Atlanta would not be Atlanta without Black Americans. You know, Atlanta culture is fucking popular because of Black Americans. And if all Black Americans moved away from Atlanta and Atlanta was then dominated by Jamaicans and Haitians, Atlanta would just feel so different, and there's no knock on Jamaicans and Haitians, but with only Jamaicans and Haitians, in New York City, in Atlanta, as a Black population, Atlanta will not be the same city. It'll be whack as shit because, man, Black Americans just have something special about them that, like, they have a culture that Black Americans have a culture that you can literally feel it, and enjoy it. If all Black Americans moved away from Atlanta, Atlanta would no longer be fun at all. It'll be dry as shit. No one will want to go to Atlanta. It would probably even energetically feel different, like a different city. So imagine if all Black Americans moved away from your city. It'll be garbage, right? It'll be garbage. Like you don't realize like how Black people like. Imagine if there was no Black Americans in the world, no Black people in the world, how fucking boring everything would be. Black people naturally, especially Black Americans, we just our existence just makes life much more intriguing. You know, without us, without Black Americans, it would be no fun. Imagine it was just a world full of white people. If it's just a world full of white people, you're not gonna have no good music to listen to. If it's just a world full of white people, you're not gonna have any sports to watch. If it's just a world full of white people, you're not gonna have no thick bitches to check out walking past. So Black Americans make life life. Black Americans we're God. Black Americans we're Hebrews. A lot of Black people around the world, even Caribbeans and West Africans, they're Hebrew. A lot of them are Hebrews too. But Black Americans, the Most High put Black Americans, at the top of humanity. Black Americans have the most cultural influence and historic inventions in the African diaspora. In the African diaspora, Black Americans have the strongest cultural influence, and Black Americans have the most accomplishments compared to any other groups of Black people in the world. And you can't argue that. So Black Americans are special people. The Most High put Black Americans as the head of Israel. A lot of Black Americans come from the tribe of Judah. And so that's why Black Americans are just so special. Black Americans, we just have that it factor that no one else has because we're God's chosen people. And just our mere existence as Black Americans put an energetic frequency in the atmosphere wherever we live becomes special. Now, I'm not saying we're perfect people. Of course, we're not perfect, but imagine if Black Americans, all the Black Americans, left your fucking city. Your city would be whack as shit. It would just be a totally different city. It would feel different. It would look different. It's like we don't realize how Black Americans, Black people, we affect everyday life. We're very important people. And New York City just fucking sucks nowadays, man. Without that Black American influence, it's just a totally different city. I don't even know how to describe it fully. It's just that horrible. All right, you guys. Peace.